of Parent Council, who did say about the volume of stuff that was in the improvement plan, but I'm confident, and we have to be aspirational about taking Loanhead Primary forward. Since August, all staff are now working collaboratively in working parties, with a minority of staff now starting to take on leadership roles, which is positive. We have a robust quality assurance calendar in place and quality assurance processes as well. All pupils are going to be part of a leadership group moving forwards. We're continuing to prioritise ASN improvements because we recognise there's still work to be done there. We've had a number of consultations with stakeholders, including on the school improvement plan. We're renewing our visions, values and aims, our curriculum rationale, and what excellent learning looks like at Loanhead. So that's current work that's undergoing at the moment within working parties. We're also going to have a really strong focus on improving learning, teaching and assessment across the school. So that's just a brief summary of where we are at the moment. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Kirsty. Just comment, please, on feedback from parents, pupils. I mean, you've done an extensive engagement and consultation with them all. Are they quite happy with the school improvement plan and the way forward and what you're trying to do?
Yes, I met with, we had Parent Council meeting last night and I shared the improvement plan with them. And they do recognise the need for improvement and they're confident within the school, that they stated that last night, about moving the school forwards. One of the key areas that we identified last session was communication, and we surveyed the parents around that. So it was discussed last night about the improved communication that they felt across the school.
Excellent. Thank you, Kirsty. Linda, Graham, you anything to add?
No, nothing in addition. Just would just highlight Kirsty's achievements in that really short space of time that she's been at the school. You can really sense the turn of change, and also probably further commend the authority learning visits, which did highlight some of the the issues there, and again are supporting us to continue to improve all of our schools. So yeah, it's always difficult when you see an inspection report that's not what we want to see, but ultimately it's a case of going in and supporting the schools along the way on that journey. So really very grateful to Kirsty coming into this new role and doing an absolutely great job. So thank you to Kirsty and to the QI team who've been working so closely alongside.
Thank you, Linda. Councillor Watts online.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I mean, it's always very difficult when you get such a report as this, but I think the important thing, and I think Kirsty has highlighted it, is that she's put together a school improvement plan that, as she said, is aspirational. And as long as the parents are happy with the moves, and it sounds like she's really beginning to turn that round. So yeah, the important thing is, yeah, there have been issues, there have been problems, but at least those have been highlighted, and at least we now know we're moving forward. And it sounds like she has a really good plan to put the school in a much better place. So well done on that.
Thank you, Councillor Watts. I couldn't agree more. We'll wish Kirsty the best of luck as she moves forward. And there's more inspections coming, I believe.
Yeah, well, there's one inspection report coming next Governance and Scrutiny Committee. That's Little Mill Primary School.
Right, sorry, I meant the updates. The same people are coming back to look at Loanhead again.
Sorry, yes, there is a revisit within 18 months of the publication of the report, which I think from memory was the 27th August. So there will be a revisit, yeah.
Okay, thank you. And just a comment that's for our education chiefs. Can I just comment, please, on some of the language? Bottom of page 74. Provide opportunities for all staff to look inwards, outwards and forwards, including visiting others' classrooms and other establishments, to view good practice and develop their own collaborative inquiry, practitioner inquiry, evidence-based practice and pedagogies. I'm a big supporter of the campaign for plain English. Now, to me, that looks like absolute gobbledygook. I don't understand it. There's another one at the bottom of page 77. establish leaders of learning roles to work collaboratively with staff to develop pedagogy and improve practice and further embed effective pedagogical strategies across all curricular areas, sharing of highly effective practice with a focus on reducing the poverty-related attainment gap. Again, words like pedagogy, I would absolutely ban. To go to a dictionary, look it up. It just means teaching methods or teaching practices or teaching science. Can we please use that language and stop putting in words in reports that no one understands? Councillor Richardson.
Chair, I'm just going to play devil's advocate here. I do agree with you to a certain extent, but maybe this is just maybe some of the educationalists in the room could maybe give us the definition of pedagogy, and we can learn something today. We can improve our vocabulary, Chair.
No, we're not doing that. Go home and Google it and look it up yourself later. Just please simplify language. Pedagogy is a word that only a person with an education degree would understand and use regular. So I think that's.
I think from our perspective, point noted, Councillor Maven, we'll take that forward. There we go. Does that hopefully that response effectively noted?
Does that mean I'm not getting the definition of pedagogy here?
I just teaching methods, teaching practice, or teaching science would be a substitute. Thank you, David.
I was just going to make the point mildly on behalf of education colleagues that obviously what this report does is present the findings of an inspection report by an outside body that is populated by education professionals who use that kind of language. So it's not all in our gift. The entire content isn't within our editorial gift. If we start changing the meaning and the wording of recommendations, things get lost in the translation. So to be fair to colleagues, well, the language is the language, and pedagogies are hard. The perennials come up before, and as you said, Chair, it does just mean teaching methods. Sometimes we have to reflect and use the language that's in the report we're reporting on. So I think, to be fair to colleagues, as Linda said, the point's taken, and we share the ambition generally to make the reports as open and accessible as possible and as intelligible as possible, but it's not always entirely in our gift sometimes. Sometimes the big words aren't ours.
Right, thank you, everyone. Kirsty, back in.
It's just to note that we don't share the full report with parents generally. It would be the summary page, which is shorter sentences and hopefully more user-friendly language. The full report is available, which was shared at the Parent Council, but that's what we would put in our school app for parents and children.
Excellent. Thank you, Kirsty. And we'll close item 3 on the agenda if there's no one else. And we'll move on. Item 4 on the agenda is Health and Social Care Partnership Strategic Commissioning Board Annual Report 23-24. And Craig MacArthur is not available today, so Alex McPhee, Interim Chief Finance Officer, is going to take this report for us. Thank you, Alex.
Okay, thanks, Chair. This report's brought annually to the Governance and Scrutiny Committee to provide an update on the transformational change activity and progress related to the Health and Social Care Partnership Strategic Commissioning Board, and the report relates to the 2023-24 financial year. The partnership established the Strategic Commissioning Board, which has delegated responsibility to oversee the implementation of a financial recovery plan on behalf of the IGIB Audit and Performance Committee and through the Audit and Performance Committee to the IGIB itself. The key priority is to ensure that the IGIB is best prepared to meet key priorities set out in the Strategic Plan 2021-30 within delegated resources and in line with national health and wellbeing outcomes. And the board is co-chaired by Craig MacArthur as Chief Officer and myself as Interim Chief Finance Officer, with representation from corporate finance, human resources, trade unions and frontline services. The board met on 9 occasions over the course of 2023-24 to consider the new applications for funding from the Transformational Change Fund and also to consider updates and previously approved transformational change initiatives. And a summary of this activity for 23-24 is highlighted in the table at paragraph 5 within the report. Paragraphs 8 to 11 provide information on the Transformational Change Fund and highlight that East Ayrshire Council initially provided funding of £1 million back in 2017-18, and this has been supplemented in subsequent financial years by IGIB approved retention of uncommitted balances set aside to progress transformational change activities. It's important to highlight that these retained balances relate to both Council and NHS uncommitted budgets delegated by both the Council and by the Health Board. The table at paragraph 11 provides a breakdown of funding approved in 23-24 totalling 2.117 million and relates to 20 separate projects as listed. As at 31st of March 2024, there was an uncommitted Transformational Change Fund balance of £1.068 million. The external audit of the 23-24 Health and Social Care Partnership accounts has been completed, and the audited annual accounts for 23-24 were formally approved at yesterday afternoon's meeting of the IGIB alongside Audit Scotland's annual audit report. There was a net overspend of £5.422 million for the partnership for 23-24, which was offset through a drawdown of uncommitted balances with no opportunity to allocate further funding for transformational change purposes. Further work has been undertaken in the current financial year to establish and evaluate the impact of current and future budget pressures and redesign services to mitigate these pressures as part of the transformation work already been taken forward through the Commissioning Board, and financial sustainability has once again been highlighted as a key risk for the IGIB as part of the external audit of the 23-24 accounts, and this is evidenced by continuing health and social care pressures in the current financial year. The Transformational Change Programme is a key component of the initial 24-25 Financial Recovery Plan, which was approved by the IGIB on the 28th of August to ensure financial sustainability going forward. A Financial Recovery Plan reporting framework has been developed to be taken forward through the IGIB Audit and Performance Committee to ensure ongoing robust monitoring of the Financial Recovery Plan and to ensure corrective actions can be considered and approved where required. And as in previous year's reports to the Governance and Scrutiny Committee, the report provides information on a few specific initiatives taken forward through the Commissioning Board at paragraphs 12 to 38 within the report. It's worthwhile highlighting that the next iteration of best value service reviews has been designed to ensure that this process is cross-cutting and supports the transformation and reconfiguration of services as part of the Financial Recovery Plan to ensure financial sustainability and to deliver effective health and social care services within delegated funding going forward. The recommendations are as highlighted at paragraph 2 of the report, and I'm happy to take any questions, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. We'll open it out to the room if there's any questions. Yeah, Councillor.
Chair, it's more of a comment here, really, but it's great to see the innovation that's obviously taking part under process within the Health and Social Care Partnership. I think everybody appreciates the technology that's possible here, to make savings, and I think, I think through the prudent measures that the council has taken under the guidance of Joe and Colin and the team, that the £40 million we've set aside puts us in a position here to be really leading, across Scotland nationally in this area, because we've put aside this money for prevention, and obviously a large part of technology within health and social care can be used around prevention. We can be used as an enabler. You've got low cost devices all over the place that can actually, if we're enabling, we can, for a relatively low cost, we can actually make huge savings that will actually come back, in time to benefit us. So I just wanted to restate that. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Cannon. Did you want back in, Alex?
Yeah, in terms of the Council's Innovation Fund, there's been a recent bid which was successful in relation to the care at home staff management system, a replacement system which has been approved in the last week or so, I understand. And this is an innovative project that will provide a fit-for-purpose monitoring and scheduling digital management system, and will improve service quality and free up face-to-face time for caring activities. So this is a big step forward. Care at home services is one of the real pressure areas in the budget, obviously ageing population, increasing costs and increasing demand for the services. And this new system will enable a move away from a mainly paper-based service delivery to a system where real-time access to updated service user information. And this obviously will allow for dynamic scheduling, which uses the artificial intelligence to automatically assign visits based on certain parameters and availability. So we're expecting to see big wins from this level of investment. It's going to take a wee bit of time, obviously, to implement this and obviously to get things moving. That's reflected within the financial recovery plan, which the IGIB approved at the end of August there. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, I appreciate we're doing a lot of good work and we are kind of leading, but I think that 40 million around the prevention gives us real opportunity to, to take off in this space. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Cannon. I've got Councillor Lennox and then Councillor Richardson. Thank you.
Thanks again, Chair. This might be a silly question, I'm not too sure, but I'm looking at page 98 in the table under approved expenditure for 23-24. My question is, first of all, could you give us an example of what takes place under the listing analogue to digital? And my question would be just, why would it be listed twice in that table? Thank you.
In terms of the analogue to digital, obviously the analogue signals for community alarms and so on have been switched off. It's been extended because of the delays in some authorities, particularly down south, and obviously getting up to speed with the new digital signal. So the position is over the pandemic, money was allocated from the council's capital fund, in which it was obviously delayed, like quite a lot of other things over the COVID pandemic. So we've actually had to extend the contracts of temporary staff to continue that implementation, to finalise that, to allow the programme to proceed to conclusion, basically. I'm actually not quite sure, because it wasn't me that wrote this report, why it's listed separately. I suspect it's because it's been two separate bids this came in, and it's just been the way it's been listed, but it relates to continuation of staffing costs to obviously finalise the implementation of the new digital systems.
Thank you, Alex. Is that okay, Councillor Lennox?
Yes, thanks. It's just that what sprung to mind was I was hoping, I kind of suspected it'd be related to the BT transition to digital, and I was kind of hoping that BT would put their hand in their pockets in terms of funding some of that transition. But I appreciate that there's probably some hardware that the Health and Social Care Partnership are responsible for.
Thank you, Councillor Lennox. I did wonder myself why analogue to digital was done twice with two different numbers. It did confuse me as well. Councillor Richardson?
Thanks, Chair. Sorry, was it Alex? Alec. I don't think we've met Alec. It was just to double check. No, it was interesting when you described that that sort of programme of modernisation, or bringing technology in to help and improve the service, etc. And what you described me, see on page 96, the second one down, innovation programme lead. Would that be a gentleman with the name of Nate Brown by any chance? Yeah. Right, okay. Just for other members and for the officers, I've met Nate a couple of times, and he's explained to me generally what his job role is and what he's going to try and do for the IGIB. And a lot of the stuff that he told me about made complete and utter sense. So it was just to say, is that a paper that's coming soon, Alex? The one that you described?
Nate's obviously been employed as innovation programme lead for a 2-year fixed term contract. Aye. And obviously it's to sit alongside obviously the wider financial recovery plan, innovation being a big part of the plan. Nate actually reports to each of the Strategic Commission and board meetings, so he brings an innovation update, and it's obviously it's pretty good to hear what some of the planning is and some of the progress that's been made around that. The next meeting of the board's actually this afternoon, so Nate's on the agenda for that. Yeah. So there will be reports going through primarily through the IGIB and through the Audit and Performance Committee to track progress against innovation and also the wider financial recovery plan.
No, that's brilliant. I'll be really interested to see that when it comes, because I mean, some of the stuff that just in general terms, if we've got officers providing the care out there and going into people's homes, I think just now they might have to come off the road to go back to a base to open up a PC to add all the notes to the cases. Whereas he was talking about giving them maybe technology where after a visit to somebody's home and providing care, they could then update the notes on a wee iPad or something, and not have to come, giving them more time out on the road to see more patients, more customers, as it were. So some of the stuff he was talking about was really, really good. So it's good that it's now happening, if you like, and we're about to see the output of bringing an innovation programme lead on board, because he really had some really good ideas when I met him. I liked what he had to say. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Councillor Richardson. No other questions? And online. That table on page 98 is confusing. It's not laid out in the best way. We need to try and find a better way to do that. There's 20 projects listed with an amount to each project, and being as I'm a big OCD kind of chap, I decided to add up all those numbers for the 20 project to find the total at the bottom. And when you add them all up, the total isn't at the bottom. The total's at the top. It's the 2.177, which I felt should have been at the bottom. And it just confused me why this 6.573 million number is at the bottom instead of the 2.117. Alex?
The 2.117, effectively, that's a project that was approved purely for 2023-24, just the way that it's basically been set out. But obviously, committed expenditure in total was the 4.456 million. So obviously that's at 20. Sorry, the committed expenditure at March 23 was 4.456 million, and when you add that to the 2.117 million, the total committed expenditure at 31st of March this year, at the end of the 23-24 financial year, is the 6.573. We can take that on board, Chair, and revise that report for the next report.
Thank you, Alex. Perhaps a bigger number should have been a wee separate table themselves. I don't know. But I appreciate as well, it's not your report, you didn't make it. You're just here presenting it. So I feel bad like I've dropped you in it somehow. Thank you very much for your reply. No other questions? Okay, we'll go back to the recommendations. Which is page 95. Which I forgot to do for the education reports. So the recommendation is just to note the comment and the update progress made in the report, otherwise to note the contents of the report. We're happy with that. Thank you. Switch my mic off, sorry. We'll move on. Item 5 in the agenda is the next one, the annual audit report 23-24, and that report's by Chief Financial Officer Joe McLachlan, who I'm hoping is online.
I'm here, Chair.
Looks like an airline pilot. Very good, Joe.
Thank you, Chair. So just a very brief introduction from myself before I hand across to colleagues from Audit Scotland. The report before you today is the summary of the audit findings from the review of the Council's financial statements, but it also builds on a whole raft of other areas too, and gives members today comment and assurance around financial sustainability, the annual accounts itself, as well as a comment on the auditor's view on the Council's leadership and the vision. It's a report that comes to you today. It's the compilation of around 3 months of work by colleagues in external audit. We have an incredibly close working relationship and proud to have Audit Scotland as our external auditors. They work really well with not just colleagues in my service, but colleagues across the Council, and grateful to Fiona Mitchell-Knight and to Louisa for their input and to the work of the team. And with your permission, Chair, I'll hand across now to colleagues from external audit to take you through the report and your committee through the report. A very important report. It's titled A Report to Those Charged with Governance. And then it sets out a whole number of audit points, but also comment from auditors that hopefully gives you and your committee assurance on the Council's finances and on the much wider role of strategy as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. And with that, we'll pass over to Louisa Yule, Louisa Yule, Senior Audit Manager, Audit Scotland, and Fiona Mitchell-Knight to take us through the next part. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So, yeah, I'm Fiona Mitchell-Knight and I'm the Audit Director responsible for the audit of East Ayrshire Council for a 5-year term, and I work with Louisa here and a team of our audit staff in completing your audit. And we're pleased to present to you, as Joe explained, the summary of our findings on the 23-24 audit. And I'm going to concentrate on talking you through the key messages that appear on page 110 of your papers, and then give you an opportunity to ask any questions. So really pleased to say that in terms of the audit of the accounts, which will be approved later today, that we've concluded that an unmodified independent auditor's report is appropriate for this year. So in terms of the jargon, I know an unmodified report might not mean a lot to you, but that's the formal terminology in international auditing standards. But what that means is that a clean or an unqualified audit opinion has been given on the accounts. So that means that in our opinion, they give a true and fair view of the financial transactions and the financial position of the council, and indeed the trusts that are administered by the council. So we also go on to say that by true and fair view, what that means is that the transactions have been reported in a way that complies with legislation and accounting rules. So that's really, really good news. In the report, we would do report on some areas where we found what we call misstatements in the accounts, and it's very standard that in all council audits we would find areas where misstatements have occurred, and pleased to say that they have been corrected. So they're in Exhibit 2 on page 117 of your papers. I'm not going to go through those in any detail because the important thing is that management have now corrected those in the accounts, and the accounts are free from material misstatement. In that table, we also refer to the pension balance, and we bring that to your attention because from every year there are large swings in pension valuations just because of the nature of those funds and the way in which the actuaries value them. So we're not concerned in any way with how that's presented in the accounts, but because of those large swings from year to year, I always draw that to the attention of you as a committee. So that's really good news. The accounts, true and fair view, and I'd also like to thank Joe and the finance team, many members sat with me here today, for the supportive approach in helping us to reach that conclusion with the audit. It's always a very condensed period from when the accounts are prepared, so I'd just like to thank the team for their involvement there. As Joe mentioned, our audit goes beyond the audit of the accounts, and what we carry out what we call a wider scope audit work, and that covers the audit of the financial position of the council, so reflect on financial management, financial sustainability, vision, leadership and governance, and the use of resources. But you'll also see that there's a section in there with a heading called Best Value, and I thought it might be useful just to explain how our work on Best Value fits together and what is reported for you today in our report. So in addition to carrying out what we call the wider scope audit work, local government council auditors are specifically required to carry out work to report on how effectively councils have arrangements in place for delivering best value in all that they do. Put simply, it's about how effectively councils are driving continuous improvement, particularly in the priorities set by the council, and we're looking for what we call a clear golden thread from the council priorities through to the planning and the financial plans and the other service plans. We're looking for demonstration in how the priorities will be delivered and how effectively performance reporting against progress against those priorities is in the council. So in terms of our how we go about that, there's a programme of national reporting. So all councils are considered by the Controller of Audit and the Accounts Commission across the term of our audit appointment. And to date, 7 councils have been discussed as part of that programme. What we'll say is East Ayrshire Council is later in that programme, and that should be viewed as a positive sign because the Accounts Commission are not concerned about the risk profile of the council. So it's a good good thing that you appear later in that programme. But in the meantime, we are reporting on aspects of best value in what we call thematic terms. And so our annual audit report contains a summary of the recommendations that had been reported last year in leadership and the development of the Council's strategic priorities and the recommendations that came from that work. And it also reflects on our thematic work on workforce planning, which is the next item on the agenda. So to provide you with a complete picture of all our findings to date, we do replicate those action plan points from that work so that you can be assured that action is being taken on those and they're being progressed as we would expect. So coming back to the key messages on best value, I think it's important probably to concentrate on number 6, where we conclude that the Council has maintained its focus on continuous improvement. And in the detail of the report, I comment that the Council demonstrates strong performance and has robust arrangements in place to deliver best value. So that's really good news. And we welcome the progress that has been made to address previous year's recommendations on the thematic report on the leadership of setting clear strategies in the Council. And we report where work is ongoing against the number of actions, but clear to conclude that we're satisfied with the progress being made. A real important cornerstone of delivering best value is about how the Council reports on its performance against its priorities, and comment there in key message 4 that performance reporting is balanced and regularly reported to elected members through a variety of formats. But equally, the Council is always looking at ways in which that can be improved, and a note there that ongoing work is being done to improve the performance management framework document. The next key message reflects on the more outward-looking aspect of that performance reporting and how effective performance reporting is to the public, which is really important too. And I note there that work is ongoing to develop dashboards which are aimed to make the presentation of performance data more easily understood by the performance. So again, good news that the Council is always looking for ways to continuously improve in what it's presenting. Key message 7 is just a very brief summary of our work on workforce, which is the next item on the agenda, but pleased to say there that there's a workforce strategy in place and clearly aligned to the strategic priorities of the Council, and that the Council has worked well with heads of service and trade unions in developing that strategy. The final sentence there reflects on the work that's ongoing to better capture the skills and development needs of the workforce going forward and to identify skill gaps at an early stage. Clearly, workforce planning is a crucial part of the planning arrangements in all councils across Scotland, particularly in these times where resources are scarce. So it's really important that the right people are in the right place at the right time to deliver what the council's setting out to do. So we'll talk a bit more about that in our next paper. Coming back to the key messages in terms of financial management, and that's where I reflect on the performance of the Council in this year's accounts. So pleased to say that the Council operated within its budget and used reserves and balances in line with its expectations and in line with those that were set out in the budgets. The usable reserves have increased, and we reflect there on the amount of balances that are earmarked for future spend. I think really important point is that key message 10, that we're concluding there are effective financial management processes in place to manage budgets. But we do reflect again that there are areas where financial information reported could be clearer, and the Council is now working on how it can provide a more clearer summary of the overall Council financial position to elected members. Moving on, our section on financial sustainability, and this is where we look forward into the medium and to the longer term and how well prepared the Council is to face the challenges of the future. And we're pleased to comment on the update to the medium-term financial strategy and that demonstrates a clear commitment to managing resources effectively over the medium term to support service delivery, and that the Council is continuing to review and update its projected funding gaps and how it will meet those in the medium to long term. We reflect there that the Council has made is innovative in taking decisions on the use of resources, and specifically we mentioned that through the financial flexibilities that have been exercised on service concession arrangements and through the funds that have become available through a reduction in employer pension contributions, that a 10-year fund has been put aside of 40 million to help invest in early intervention and prevention, and with a view to help shape the future of the council and better lead to better outcomes for the community. So that's a really positive initiative that fund has been put forward for positive use and isn't being used just to fund annual pressures on the service delivery. In terms of vision, leadership and governance, I've already said that, our view is that the performance in the council is strong and that the council demonstrates best value arrangements. So pleased to say that in that context there are clear strategic objectives set out, and the strategic plan and service improvement plans set those out and are the foundation on which the council demonstrates how it will use its resources to deliver against that. We say that the council operates in an open and transparent manner, and governance and decision-making arrangements are appropriate and operate effectively, and that shouldn't be taken for granted. That's a really strong positive assurance from us on the arrangements that are in place in the council. In terms of looking at the use of resources to improve outcomes, because obviously that's really important, that the impact on citizens in the region. So we reflect there on the council's overall service performance, and we reflect on some of the local government benchmarking framework information in that context, and we say that 52% of the local government benchmarking indicators were in the top 2 quartiles in 22-23, and that's a positive position. The council's overall service performance in relation to other councils has remained stable, and the performance has improved over the longer term. So good news there in terms of where the council sits compared to others. And we reflect, throughout our best value work in how the council uses that information to drive its improvements going forward. Make positive comments there about the community planning arrangements. They're well established, and the council works well with partners to deliver improvements against the collective vision in the area. My final key message reflects on what I mentioned earlier about the 10-year, the 40 million 10-year fund which is in place to support children living in poverty, and how that will be used to improve outcomes in terms of early intervention and prevention. So very much a whistle-stop tour through all our work, and I hope that that independent assurance in all those areas is really helpful to you. In terms of we report on a number of action plan points in the audit, and they appear from pages 158 of our report and in your papers there. The first 3 of those action plan points relate to improvements that are in terms of accounting practices, and those are in response to the areas that we reported in Exhibit 2 around the accounts. Point 4 is in terms of the financial reporting and how we feel that that overall position of the council's financial position could be clearer, and the council's committed to looking at that already through how it reports that information to members. And then from page 160 onwards, it's the best value improvement actions, both on workforce and in terms of the follow-up that we did in the previous work on leadership in setting the strategic objectives. So I'm not proposing to go through those in detail, but I hope by you seeing those there as an appendix, you see that we monitor progress made by the council, and indeed that's a positive assurance that the council is actioning all those actions and in appropriate timescales. scale. That's all I want to say on the annual audit report. We also have presented, as part of the papers from page 169, a summary letter that sets out that we have concluded on our audit work. It includes the detail of the audit opinion, the true and fair audit opinion, which I won't go through in detail, but that's all positive assurance for you. And it also includes a letter of representation, which is provided to us by the Section 95 officer as a part of the audit assurance jigsaw, and it just sets out in writing for us the key approach that has been taken and key assurances that are given to us in writing on the basis on which the accounts have been prepared. So there's nothing unusual or worrying for you in terms of it's pretty standard letter that's been provided there. So a lot of information for you to take in there, I know, but I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, Fiona. We'll open to the room. Are there any questions in the room? Councillor Lennox.
Thanks again, Chair, and thank you for the very comprehensive report. I appreciate, on behalf of the elected members, the work that's being done in the background in terms of the extensive work that you're doing. It helps give us peace of mind in terms of we know that things are working properly above board and as they should. Just one question from myself in terms of the fairly extensive report that you provided. Recommendation 3, you're recommending that management should review the arrangements in place for ensuring the underlying asset records are accurate and detailed. Was there something specific that triggered that particular recommendation? Thank you.
Thank you. During our review of non-current assets, this is an area I would say that we spend a lot of time looking at. It's an area that includes some estimates and judgments around the valuations of land and buildings and various other assets. A couple of things I would say. One, there was a change in personnel and who undertakes the work around non-current assets within the council. This is a really positive step in terms of increasing the capacity within the council to ensure that there's more than one reliance or so that there's not sole reliance on one individual. Obviously a new person looking at it also picks up some things that maybe they question or they think this could be recorded better. And then there were a few things that we identified within our audit where there were maybe mistakes made in inputting data into the fixed asset register. But there's a lot of input that's required every year when the valuation information comes in. So it is easy for somebody to mistype a figure or, and it's just around those checks that we would just recommend that further works or further checks are maybe undertaken. There were also a couple of instances where finance were not aware of certain of information in relation to some assets that maybe the estates team were. So it's just about making sure that all the relevant members of staff are aware of all the information so that they're making informed decisions and carrying out their work.
Thank you, Lisa, for that answer, and thank you, Councillor Lennox, for the question. Joe, did you want back in on after that question?
Through you, Chair, that was really kind of you. And I suppose what Louisa's helpfully setting out is just the complexity of the annual statements. So I suppose many years ago, when the annual accounts was a much smaller document, then it was something that probably was self-contained within finance. But nowadays we come to people in culture for payroll, we come to facilities and property management for estates and assets, corporate support for strategy and best value, and a whole number of other colleagues across the council. And this recommendation is one that we'll take forward. You can see that the action plan for ourselves is for to speak with colleagues and to deal with colleagues in facilities and property management, and specifically around the team that are working on the capital assets. So when we're building and when we're closing during a build, and that passing that information on to relevant colleagues in estates so that we can then get that real accurate picture, as Louisa touched on the state of that asset. Is it an operational asset, or is it an asset under construction? And that's the terms that we would use. And perhaps there's some support that needed in other parts of the council. We're happy to provide that, but the recommendation will be taken forward by ourselves, but clearly involves other colleagues in other parts of the council, Chair.
Thank you, Joe. We'll go to Councillor Watts next online.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a quick question, really. On page 118, to do with the pension balance. Obviously, it's noted in there the year-on-year movement of the pension balances. And obviously, we show in the accounts that the balance sheet obviously to zero. Is this, I know you mentioned it, but for clarity, is this just a specific issue for East Ayrshire, or is it an issue that is basically potentially across the whole of the sort of council estate?
Thanks, Councillor. This is a common issue across Scotland, and the guidance that we've had on the basis on which pension, particularly pension assets, which was it was a new situation that arose over the last couple of years for there to be a pension asset rather than a pension liability, and the guidance on how that's been accounted for has evolved over a time because it was unusual transactions. So all councils have seen this change in the way in which it's been accounted for, and indeed the prior year adjustments to reflect the change in guidance will have filtered their way through all councils. So it's nothing for you to be concerned about. It is a national picture. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Watts. Thank you, Fiona, for the reply. Councillor Richardson.
Just to come back to Councillor Watts, obviously the Strathclyde Pension Fund forms only a part of the Scottish Local Government Pension Scheme. It is the largest fund by far, but it forms only a part of it. Just to let them know that all of Scotland's local government pension schemes are they're in rude health just now, Neil. You've not got anything to worry about. And also I only know that because I sit on the advisory board.
Thank you for that, Councillor Richardson.
Thank you. Can I ask, can you give me a wee bit more detail on the specifics? Recommendation 1, page 117, which is talking about intangible assets. The previous councillor was asking about underlying asset records. What's intangible assets? And thank you.
So intangible assets will be like software licenses. And when we reviewed the unaudited accounts, we were aware that there weren't any any intangible assets disclosed, which is quite unusual. So we asked some questions and we started looking at what software licenses were in place within the council. And I have to say that a lot of work was undertaken by the finance team and colleagues across the council to bring these records together to identify the intangible assets in place. And it really is, it's a disclosure in the notes to the accounts, a split between your property, plant and equipment, your land and buildings, and then your intangible assets that are obviously the software licenses. So a lot of work has been undertaken, and the council have committed to review this again next year just to make sure there aren't any that they've missed in terms of pulling that list together, because it was a time pressured exercise that they undertook, but it was extensive work that was undertaken.
Thank you, Louisa. We're aware of significant financial challenges all councils are facing in the coming years. Is there any concerns for your work, Louisa and Fiona, that you want to raise regarding East Ayrshire specifically that you feel can be brought to our attention?
I think I would draw to your attention the key message 10, that we feel there are effective management processes in place to manage budgets, and how we commend the Council's update of its medium-term financial strategy and the commitment that it shows to keeping that under review in terms of how it's going to deliver the funding gap. I think that the usable reserves have increased, so the council recognise that spending of reserves on an annual basis to support annual service spend is not sustainable in the long term, and is looking at innovative ways in which services can be financed going forward. So, you know, again, the 10-year fund that referred to support early intervention and prevention. So I think putting all of that picture together, we feel that the council is managing its finances effectively, but clearly, you know, the financial pressures on all councils are great, and all councils need to look at ways in which they can transform and change services to sustain or deliver on the services that are their priority in the local area. So it's not an easy position, but the council manages its position well, is how I'd summarise. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fiona. Joe, do you want back in on this before we move on? And sorry, Councillor Cannon next.
Thank you, Chair. I suppose we do face challenges, but we have set aside, our council set aside that fund, which will be, I think, a great help going forward. It's a 10-year plan, but it's aligned to supporting children living in poverty, but more importantly, to take the early intervention and prevention and try and unlock the benefits that we hear about in Christie, and doing that in a meaningful way. We had that at the roundtable event at Centre Stage a few weeks ago, and there's more work to come on that as we take that forward. So I'm not overly concerned. I think we're going through a fairly tough time at the moment, but we've got sufficient new and emerging processes in place to try and support services through this year. And I think going forward, in terms of setting the budget for next year, work's well advanced on that, and we'll bring that before members and before CMT in very early course. So we have some challenges. I think we're better placed than most, dare I say it, but it's about being collegiate at an officer level, and it's about receiving that direction and leadership, and that also that direction from elected members too, Chair. So that's what I would say. But again, grateful to the team and grateful to external audit, because this external verification, someone else, a new set of eyes coming in to look at things is extremely helpful to me, and I know helpful to David as the monitoring officer too.
Councillor Canning.
Thanks, Chair. Just to reiterate some of the points, but just to say thanks for a very comprehensive report. I think it answers most of the questions that we probably had, and I think it's an excellent report. Also, it reflects very well, I think, on the finance team in general, and I think it's worth saying thanks to Joe, Mark, Colin, and the team, you know, for the work they do to get this sort of audit report. I suppose that just leaves us with some sort of smaller questions, and I suppose going back to the page 117, the ESCO balances and the intangibles. I mean, I suppose I was a little bit surprised, because I'm assuming we've had ESCO balances before. Why was it misclassified this time? And I suppose on the intangible assets, it's less than materiality, but it's a relatively large amount, the 5 million, the gross. So, I mean, I'm just curious as to why, you know, were there changes in accounting standards recently? Are there nuances in these accounting policies which mean that you can kind of sit on both sides, or were they just simply some mistakes which prove that you're not perfect, even though you're very, very good? So just curious. Thanks.
Just to come in through you, Chair. On the escrow balances, it was a sort of kind of the way we were looking to treat it. So essentially, we were accounting it in through our bank accounts, although the bank account is an escrow, so it's not our funding, but it is in a bank account that essentially is under East Ayrshire Council, and we had essentially a creditor to write that out. So essentially it was net off to zero. The recommendation came from audit that on the basis that it's an escrow balance, it shouldn't appear in our accounts at all. So essentially it was simply a removal from that. So that was just more a point of clarification from audit in terms of the treatment, in terms of those balances going forward. In terms of the intangibles, this is probably a sort of kind of increased area as we see IT software increasingly tends to get paid on an annual basis, and as opposed to previously where we would have longer term contracts that were capitalised, so there's an awful lot more revenue funding goes towards that, and it's that recognition that although we're paying for it on an annual basis, we are actually tied into a sort of longer term agreement in relation to that, and that as such we need to recognise the right of use that we have of that asset. So the appropriate treatment in those cases is to actually recognise it as an asset and amortise it over the period of time. So I would say that influence of sort of more of a change in how we see we're paying for IT and software has probably led to that sort of kind of misstatement, and we'll take action to correct that going forward.
Sure, thanks. I mean, I suppose that explains the second one. The escrow balance, I suppose, is this the first? Presumably it's not the first time we've had escrow balances. I know this was a specific one, but
no, the escrow balances here, and the issue isn't in relation to having the escrow balances. The issue, as you've heard, is simply in relation to how colleagues treated them within their accounts. That goes right back to 2013 in terms of the report to Council following on from the collapse of the Opencast situation. And Council agreed then that in terms of the arrangements that would be acceptable around future bond arrangements, then escrow literally being money in the bank is as safe as it gets. So these occasionally where developers prefer to put cash in escrow to put in payments to bonds, then it affords us a greater level of protection. So it's simply one of the options of how we make sure that there's sufficient funding for the restoration of any site while developments are either under construction or operation. So the escrow balances are within policy as approved back in 2013 when we set out our stall afresh on the back of what happened with Opencast.
yeah, thanks. No, I appreciate. I mean, I understand what escrow balance is. Just what changed in the country. Maybe the auditors had missed it on the previous audits, but no, thanks.
Yes, so I think you already made the point that the figures here are not material. So we don't test every transaction in the accounts. We take a risk-based approach and select a sample of transactions to test. And the escrow balances were one that we selected this year to test as part of our sample. And so as pointed out, that these have been there for several years, but it just had not been picked up as one of the sample items for testing, but was this year and has been resolved accordingly.
Yeah, thanks. I suppose at the back of my mind was the fact that these could have been quite large in the past because of the Opencast mines, but that's fine. I think that's my question. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Cannon, for the question. Thank you, Fiona. David?
Sure. If you indulge, just a wee housekeeping matter that should assist the committee in relation to a future meeting. Every year, as members know, we conduct the internal self-assessment by members of the Governance and Scrutiny Committee following the SIPFA guidance. One of the asks in there, or one of the issues raised in there, is a simple question of whether or not our external auditors have met in private with the members of this committee, which is one I think we look at each time and wonder which way is up, because is it no news or no meetings is good or bad? Clearly, if there were issues, you would anticipate a meeting. So it's one that we kind of just nibble round at each self-assessment and promise ourselves we'll engage with you. But so given you're here, it was really just to make the point that the committee's view is simply that should that need ever arise, and should the external auditors ever feel they need to have that meeting, then the members are more than happy to accommodate any such request should it come forward in the future. That's come out of the self-assessments. But like yourselves, no doubt, the members wouldn't be seeking meetings on any kind of even an annual basis just for the sake of meetings if there's no business to transact. So it was just to put that out there, and we can reflect on that in the next annual self-assessment, that it's been raised here and there's an open invite. Should the external auditors ever feel they need, then it would be an open door as far as the members are concerned. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, David. Councillor Richardson.
Thanks, Chair. After Councillor Watts came in and asked about pensions, it's just really for my own clarity. It's page 119, and it's the second paragraph. And also it says, the balance sheet also includes 39.941 million of unfunded pension benefits, which require to be shown separately. Does that relate to the teachers' pension fund by any chance? The only reason that I'm asking is obviously there's funded pension schemes, such as the Strathclyde Pension Fund, where you've got a massive pool of investments that fund the future benefits. But you've also got unfunded pension schemes, like the state pension, for instance, where there is no pool of investments and current contributions or national insurance in the respect to the state pension fund pay the benefits of current pensioners. But there is no pool of investments. And I'm just wondering where the balance sheet includes 39.941 million of unfunded pension benefits, what that relates to. I'm thinking it might relate to the teachers' pension fund, but it's just for my own clarification.
Thank you, Councillor Richardson. Colin?
Just to clarify in that, it's not, it's in relation to the Strathclyde pension, so it's not in relation to teachers. What it relates to is retirement packages that will go back for a long historical period of time, in which there is an additional element that has to be sort of kind of funded by the council, as opposed to the ongoing contributions that go in regularly throughout. So every authority will have an element that's classed as an unfunded element as such. So that's just recognising that where that's the case, that we have to disclose that separately for the purposes of it, and that's the point that external audit are just making a note of there, that's separately disclosed, whereas in previous years it hadn't been netted off, so it's now separately disclosed to make that point that's a sort of kind of recognisable East Ayrshire liability.
Thank you, Colin. I suppose there are no more questions or comments. Page 107, the conclusions. The audit of the Council's 23-24 annual accounts has been completed, allowing them to be published within the statutory timescale, and the auditor has issued an unmodified audit opinion. I would thank you, Audit Scotland, for all the work that you've done and for coming in today to present the report. And if we go to the recommendations, page 105, it's approved the Council's audited 23-24 annual accounts for signature, otherwise not the contents of the report. Are we happy with that, elected members? Thank you. Now, I'm conscious we've been going for 2 hours, 15 minutes. What's the feeling in the room? Would you like a wee comfort break before we continue with the rest of the papers? Or do you...
Might like to take the next one because it would let the auditors go. Because external auditors are here for this one, and they could go rather than
right.
It's up to you, but you could maybe squeeze one more in and then take the last three.
I'll follow best advice. We'll take item 6 now, Jen, and then we'll have a wee quick break. Okay, so item 6, because our external auditors are also involved in that. It's the best value thematic work in East Ayrshire Council 23-24, and presenting this one is Amanda Lowe, Head of People and Culture, and Louisa, you'll Audit Scotland will come in on that one as well. Thank you. It's straight to Louisa. All right, thank you. Louisa.
Actually, me again, Chair. Sorry, but Louise is here to help me out with the detailed questions. So, so earlier I explained that the workforce report is part of our thematic best value work, and the Accounts Commission asks auditors each year to cover a best value thematic area so that they can get a national picture of the position across Scotland in terms of certain arrangements, and this year asked us to cover workforce planning across councils. So the report is quite lengthy because it includes information about the council's workforce planning arrangements. So that's for the Commission to be able to establish the position in East Ayrshire and across Scotland. But also the purpose of the report is to identify areas where the council could also improve further in where it is with its workforce planning. And as mentioned before, really important area for any council in terms of having to deliver services in times of financial pressures, and with the pressures, specific pressures on workforce in terms of recruitment, development and absence, and ageing workforces across Scotland. The scope of the audit work reflected on how well workforce plans are integrated with the council's strategic plans, looked at how digital technology is being used to support workforce delivery and service quality and outcomes. It looked at how the councils are using hybrid and remote working and other innovative working practices in terms of delivering services, and anything that the council was using to develop future workforce capacity and skills needs, and specifically looking for innovative practices in those areas. And it's also reflecting on areas where the council is working in partnership or sharing roles across partner organisations to deliver services, and finally how effectively the council is measuring the impact of its workforce planning approaches. And so our key messages from page 307 reflect on our conclusions on this work. Key message 1 sets out the context in terms of nearly 7,000 people being employed by the council, and reflects on one of the challenges that more than half of those are aged 45 or over, and then that adds to pressures in terms of the recruitment, development and absence processes to be managed by the council. We reflect on the council's workforce strategy there and say that it's clearly aligned to the strategic priorities in the strategic plan. So really good information and conclusions there. But of course, improvements need to be made in development of that information and in terms of the action plan that sits alongside the workforce strategy. We reflect on the good news about how the strategy was developed in terms of a collaborative approach with heads of services and trade unions. And then from key message 4 onwards, we talk about the developments that are ongoing in terms of understanding the workforce's skills and learning, and how that will be aligned with future workforce action plans. And then we reflect on the council's digital strategies and how investment in digital strategy is changing the way in which services deliver. But throughout the report, we refer to more needs to be done to reflect on the impact that has on the workforce, and that's something that we reflect on our recommendations. We reflect that the council has flexible working policies and is working on a number of initiatives to make the best use of training opportunities for young people across the area. And we reflect on areas where the council is working with other councils, such as South Ayrshire on the Roads Alliance, and that's an area where it makes the best use of workforce in delivering those services. Finally, we reflect that the council monitors the effectiveness of its workforce planning approach through its workforce strategy action plan, and that it's developed workforce performance measures, and those are reported quarterly through East Ayrshire Performs. Taking that one step further, the council is now asking services to identify where long-term workforce reductions or movements or changes could be made to address the challenges of the future in terms of delivering future services within the financial constraints that are being experienced by the council. So positive messages about where the council is, but lots of information about where it's taking steps to improve those workforce arrangements going forward. And our action plan from page 341 of the papers reflects on the recommendations that we've made in response to that work. 6 action plan points. I'm pleased to say that the management response to those recommendations is positive, and that the council has now agreed arrangements that will be progressed to make those improvements. And again, that's something that we will monitor as part of next year's audits and report back to you. So happy to take any questions on what we've reported, or indeed to address those to Amanda, the head of people in culture, who was key to us completing this work and to getting that commitment about future improvements. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Fiona. Anyone, any comments or questions or want to come in? No one. You're getting off light, Fiona. Joe online. Thank you.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Just picking up what Fiona has said, you know, page 320 sets out some just important points for committee today. This is an Audit Scotland report on workforce, but at the back end of it, it relates that workforce to digital and the expectation of the Accounts Commission on how local government should use the digital innovation. It mentions reshaping the workforce, and it mentions the use of innovation and digital technology to make that workforce look different. When we are discussing this, and you'll soon receive some reports from the Digital Management Board, it's clear as well, members, that the expectation is that in addition to reshaping the workforce, it will ultimately reduce the workforce to some extent, and probably to a large extent in some areas as we deploy digital technology. And I think that's implicit in the report. And I think it's an expectation on us as a management team or on you as elected members just to set the scene for that and acknowledge that as we go through the coming months, members in state will see and hear more reports around digital and the work that's been undertaken. Some members already touched on earlier today around the use of digital software in social care workforce, but there's much more taking place as well, and all aligned to this report, because I expect that as we go through the years that the Accounts Commission will begin to follow up this report and try and seek information and understanding about how councils have used this report to reshape the workforce and in some cases reduce that workforce, Chair. So it's just an important point I wanted to make just for the committee today and for members generally.
Thank you, Joe. As I'm looking at page 318, I like that it's been recognised that we're engaging effectively with the heads of services and with the trade unions and other external stakeholders. I take it that's our arm's length organisations. I wonder if our auditors want to comment on that, on the amount of engagement we're doing. It's very good.
As part of the audit work that we undertook in relation to workforce, we did have meetings with trade union representatives, and we asked their opinions, and that is what's reflected in the report. We asked about the level of engagement that they have, and they provided examples of where engagement's taken place. I think one of the things they did comment on was sometimes they would like earlier engagement in certain changes that are going to be made, but overall it was very positive, the messages that we heard at those meetings.
Thank you, Louisa. Okay. There's nothing else. Again, I'll thank Audit Scotland for your work on that second part of the report. I thought they were separate reports. I didn't work out that they were actually kind of twinned together, that you were working on both at the same time. Thank you very much. And we're happy with the recommendations, which is not the contents of the report. Thank you, elected members. We will now do a quick comfort break. There are only 3 items left in the agenda. It's 12:25. Would 15 minutes be enough? Okay, we'll return in 15 minutes. Thank you.